Hi, everybody. Welcome to the HR Roundtable. We're so glad that you could join us today for engaging teams through applied creativity, uncovering true needs and aligned success. We're very happy today to have with us Veronica Scarpolino, who just is really going to be able to help us from an emotional intelligence standpoint, really look at better ways to address things through this applied creativity, learning those practical techniques, things that we can do to really help us build those connections, deal with resilience, that supportive environment, what we do in HR every day to be able to help us continue to build those connections with others. Certainly, it's become more of a challenge in the current environment that we're in. Well, Veronica is an executive career transition coach and master facilitator with over 20 years of experience empowering leaders to navigate complex challenges and to drive meaningful engagement. Specializing in creative intelligence, which is the synergy between emotional intelligence and creativity, Veronica helps professionals and leaders harness diverse thinking styles to foster resilience and cultivate inclusive, high-performing environments. A member of Forefront, powered by Marshall Goldsmith's 100 coaches, she's known for her dynamic approach to coaching that combines emotional intelligence with creative problem solving to inspire lasting, transformative impact. Veronica, let me go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, PJ, for inviting me to speak to your beautiful group. And good morning, everybody. It's great to see you. I'm going to share my screen in a second, but before I do, I just want to uh, share with you a workbook that you can use today. This is a PDF that you should be able to download. I just dropped it in the chat. If you want to use it as a guide and write on your own paper, or if you have a printer handy, I know that printing is kind of going out of style. So whatever works for you. Um, and so let me share my screen. And so yes, today I am incredibly excited to talk to you about how using applied creativity can help you with the engagement and alignment in the work that you do. And as we get started, I want you to imagine that we're all going to play a game together. And I have a picture here with some different game pieces. And what game are we playing? And what are the rules of this game? And as we get started in the game, there might be some misalignment in what's known about the rules of the game, what the goal of it is, what's the outcome, and is alignment assumed between us in what it is that we're doing? Are our connections knocked askew because of this misunderstanding up front of what this game is? And is our understanding going to cause disruption? And what's interesting is that in the workplace, we are playing a game with rules, and often those rules are assumed. And it's not uncommon that these misaligned understandings end up disrupting your connections with each other, the engagement that you have, and the success of the outcomes and goals that you're aiming for. And so that's what we're going to be framing things off of today is how do we get aligned? I'm going to ask PJ to launch a poll to capture what your belief is coming into our session today about the diversity of perspectives that you have where you work. How aligned do you believe you and your employees are in the definition of success, for example? There's no right or wrong answer to this. This is just to capture a sense of where you are. All right, and I think PJ, if you and I are not doing this poll, then we've got everybody. Okay, so this is pretty, and if you can share, so nobody says that they feel very aligned, which is pretty interesting. And I also see that some of you are not sure that you haven't thought about this before. And so I'm heartened in that what I have prepared for you is going to be relevant, but that there is some work to do. And So what I'd now like to do is, and we can pull down that poll, is to think about what success means. And from your point of view, what does that mean? And if you can, please type your definition of success into the chat. And let's take a look at what together you think success means. I'm going to pull down my screen so that I can see chat. And we're thinking in terms of at work, when working with your team, working with your peers, working up, working down. What does success mean? So we have some answers that are starting to be dropped in. We have achieving our strategic goals, getting the results that you set out to get, and meeting goals. Okay. Now, how do you know that the goals are understood and agreed upon? How are you sure that what you think is the desired outcome is what everybody else is also considering to be the desired outcome? And what could it mean if you're all not on the same page? If the person who's working in accounting has a different set of ideas of what it means to be successful versus somebody who's working in marketing versus somebody who's working in HR. So we have another answer, achieving personal or professional growth, happiness, and fulfillment. Okay, so one of the goals is happiness and fulfillment. Does everybody know that? Does everybody know that that's one of the goals that are being aimed for here? And so right from the get-go, there can be that misalignment, and the ripple effects of that through the course of work together can have repercussions not only on the true outcome and success of that, but how people feel about their work as they move through the process, the agreement or disagreement on what it is that you're trying to achieve, and that well-being that a lot of you are charged with in paying attention to. One more before we go back to the presentation is achieving deliverables set forward in line with organizational strategy. Right. And who wrote those? And what does that mean? So let me pull my screen back up for you. And so you can see that even from this point of view, the idea of what success means, a simple word, can lead to potential miscommunication moving forward. So let me reintroduce myself because here we are already diving into things, and I want to give you a sense of why I feel so passionate about the work that I do. So I'm Veronica Scarpolino. I'm a board certified coach and a professional certified coach through the ICF and a master facilitator, as PJ said. And I'm the founder of Goldfinch Leadership. I call myself a creative intelligence practitioner. And what that means is somebody who is versed in not only working in the realm of ideas and creative thinking, but also in emotional intelligence and where those two things not only collide, but work together. The third part of creative intelligence is action. So having applied creativity, how do you apply what your ideas are to real world settings is the key. Otherwise, you're just imagining. My background is actually in the arts, and I'm informed by the creative process of the studio. And I have been watching for many years some really talented people work through the creative process, bringing their ideas to fruition, and the emotional journey that they go through along the way. And what's really interesting is that the creative process in something like a studio is easily transferable to a wide variety of settings. And that creativity is not just about art, it is specifically about problem solving and connecting. And so that's where it is a universal skill set that we all inherently have, whether or not you know you're using it. So here's the challenge. The World Economic Forum says that the most rapidly increasing skills that you can expect between last year and 2027 are these on the screen. And notice that creative thinking is at the top. We also have along the lines of curiosity and lifelong learning, motivation and self-awareness, and analytical thinking. Resilience, flexibility, and agility are in there right in the middle as well. And there's an agreed upon understanding that these are really important skills to have today, but there's not a lot of agreement on how you get there, specifically on the creative thinking aspect. It's a nice to have, or is it a must have? Also, according to the World Economic Forum, the top 10 skills that we can anticipate going into the new year have a lot of these same elements. And you'll see that creativity, originality, and initiative are right there in the middle. So if these are important skills to have, one, how are they even relevant to the work that you're doing? And two, how do you go about learning these in such a way that it doesn't add extra burden to your already heavy set of responsibilities and probably dwindling resources? So let me tell you a story about an HR leader that I've been working with for the past 6 months. She works in nonprofit, and the challenge that she was facing was that they got a new chief operating officer. And she had a wonderful relationship with her prior chief operating officer, and this new person is very different. And so there were a lot of clashes right up front. And her confidence took a big hit in standing up for what her expertise was, advocating for the work that she does, and even just communicating the importance of different changes that were coming online to somebody who spoke a different language, basically. And the work that we ended up doing together was to help her better understand not only what her thinking style is, but understand how different she might be from her COO. Incidentally, the tool that we used to help her understand herself better was Principles U, which is a free assessment that you can take online, and it's really beautiful. You don't need a translator to gain value, but when used in conjunction with what I did with the HR leader, ended up really helping her understand why she's not only so perfect for the work that she does, but also how to be even better when interfacing with somebody who's above her, who has different thinking style, different motivations, and a totally different agenda. So through the course of the 6 months together, not only was she able to better frame what she wanted to communicate to her COO so that she was delivering not only what the COO wanted to see, but also met the needs of her department and of the people that she served, but it also helped her gain confidence in her voice. And she has uh, been elevated from an HR manager to head of HR as a result of the work that we were doing together. So it was really an effective process. So here's how it works in the context of this particular coaching setup. So what we did together was help her challenge her assumptions about not only what she herself was thinking, but also the situation and the person she was working with. She was able to reframe the problems that she thought she was facing into not just the symptoms of what she was feeling, but what was underneath them, and uncover those hidden needs of her COO, because ultimately she's a helper. She's a peacekeeper. She's somebody who really wants to see things work well. And so it was important for her to find those hidden needs. That helped her to align their perspectives and foster a connection so they have a very strong working relationship now. And we are going to do an exercise together to walk you through some of this process. Now, granted, this was a 6-month engagement. We're not going to be able to make that kind of progress individually with a group like this, but I want you to have a taste of what this could look like. So you can open up your workbook, and we're going to walk through together what this is. You can also set your workbook aside as a reminder later of what this process was and just go off of the screen. That's totally fine. And actually, you know what? Before we get started, I'm going to pull my screen down and see if there's any questions. Because that was a lot of information to just dump on you before we jump into what an exercise might look like. So you can come off of mute and ask a question or drop it in the chat before we move on. Okay, well, I'm going to take the silence as everything is good, and let's get into how this can work for you. So let me pull my screen back up. And so your first step is going to be to identify a challenge that you're facing. So think about a specific workplace challenge like low engagement or communication issue, and write down what that challenge is. Define what your challenge is. And then I want you to list the assumptions that you're making about this challenge. What do you know about it instinctively? And those are often what we can consider assumptions. Sometimes our assumptions are accurate, and sometimes our assumptions are not. So don't worry about writing down whether this is a false or true assumption. Just write down some assumptions. I'll give you a minute to think about this challenge and a few assumptions that you're making. I'm going to set my timer, and we'll do 1 minute for you to jot down some ideas. And at any point, if you have questions, you can come off of mute so I can hear you, or you can drop it in the chat and maybe PJ can read them to me. So an evergreen dilemma that people face across industries and across levels is that we often rush to solve a problem before we truly understand what the problem is. And what happens is you end up spending your resources, your time, your energy, and finances on solving something that isn't even the true problem. It's a symptom or it's an assumption. And so spending some time questioning what the problem is up front is often one of the keys to truly solving what it is that's in front of you. And challenging your assumptions is one of the first steps in applying a creative mindset. You're leaning into the idea of curiosity, which is a very forward-looking and empathetic way of being. And empathy is a strong emotional intelligence key. Because without empathy, we're not acknowledging that other people have differences of experience. Okay, so now that you have a challenge that is defined and some assumptions that you have written down, our next step is going to be to ask one of the most powerful questions: what if? And so what I'd like you to do is think of just a small handful of questions to reframe what your challenge might be. So for example, what if engagement was about empowerment instead of productivity? What if this person I'm working with thinks differently than me? What if their strengths are the things I'm not good at? So write a series of what if questions that lean again into that curiosity. The next step that you're going to be doing by yourself, but in the real world, out in the wild, you would be engaging with other people in this part of the process. You're going to be thinking about what a success statement could be. This is going to be informed by the questions you just posed to yourself. So, for example, a what if statement could be formed as a question or as a full-on statement. But for example, what does a win look like for you, direct report? It could be in the form of a statement. Success looks like my direct report using their strengths to solve this problem. These are just some examples, but what insights could you gain from these assumptions and questions that you were asking yourself? And not incidentally, you're practicing another applied creativity technique called question storming. And by sitting in the idea of asking questions, you're not actively trying to solve the problem yet. You're exploring what might be beneath the surface. Question storming is a really strong and powerful way to establish what is the true issue that you're dealing with. And it does not have to take a long time. In fact, anything more than 7 minutes of brainstorming ends up becoming counterproductive. So you can even just set a timer for 5 minutes and see how many questions you can come up with. What do you not know? What are you bumping up against? What are your anxieties and challenges here? Form them into a question and use who, what, when, where, why, and what if. So now that you have formed your success statements or success questions, I'd love to hear what insights you gained. So what do your success statements suggest to you? So if you could drop your success statements or your insight into the chat, or come off of mute, come on screen and share with the group so that we can learn from each other on what it is that this process delivered to you.
I can share mine.
Hi, Letitia. Thank you.
So my first the problem of the question was thinking about a scenario that I dealt with, which was regarding low engagement and participation with employees with regards to our learning and development courses that we were offering, LinkedIn Learning, Franklin Covey, things like that. And just the initial thoughts of, why people weren't participating. Was it because they didn't care about the content we were providing for them? Or maybe they didn't feel like it was relevant. And I think we didn't do this, but we figured out a way to help increase the participation. But I think it would have been more helpful if we would have thought about more about the why and not just assuming that it was the content we were providing that wasn't what they wanted, but maybe thinking about, was it an issue with the employees are too busy? Is there something going on? Is it, the wrong quarter? Is there, a big meeting that everyone's planning for? Or is there just something that's going on that they can't pull themselves away? And nobody wants to do this at home on their own time. Or if the managers aren't actively encouraging them to do this or supporting them in doing it and saying, hey, I saw this course that, HR is talking about. I really want you guys to take it. Try to find some time this week. Let me know if I can support you in that. Because I think it will go a long way if the managers were supporting them. And I think it wasn't a question that we really asked. We just kept trying to find new things to offer. So I think for me, success would have, what it did look like and what ended up happening was getting increased participation in the content we were providing, But I think now success would have been better if, in addition to that, we were able to really figure out why employees weren't taking the courses and if we could help fix that problem instead of just getting people to sign up.
And so now, with this in mind, how can you shift into the future? So the next time that you have a learning module that you want to introduce, what might you do differently?
Just think about more so what the root cause is and not just looking at the problem and just thinking, oh, people aren't signing up for these courses. We have to figure out how to get them to do that instead of, I think next time it would be like, hey, I wonder if something's going on. Are we surveying to ask them? There was one course that's making me think about this question you posed. We had the course at different times of the year and we did it in the spring this year and we had so many people sign up that we actually didn't have enough room for everybody. And so we were like, what was so different about this course this time of year? And so we sent a survey out and we asked them, if they liked this time of year. Nobody, of course, did the survey, but we just looked at it like, hey, since this course was so successful in March, we're going to run it in March again because I feel like that's just, and let's just see what happens. And if it does well again, then that means that this is a good time for this particular course. So I think just trying to figure out the real problem instead of just trying to fix it without diagnosing it first.
And so what I'm hearing is that when you're in a vacuum and you're making assumptions about why somebody is or is not engaging with an offering, um, there can be a lot of judgment or misinterpretation of information that you don't have. And then instead, leaning into curiosity and taking the time to think about from another person's point of view what might be going on, or even directly asking them, that could give you more information to better move forward with. And so solving a problem in a way that actually is the problem and not an idea or a symptom of it.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
I
That was
think,
a great
Veronica, if
example.
you could give us the answer to that, that would be the key to all of HR's issues. I think so much of what we do is
Uh-huh.
we know we've got a great product, whether it's training, whether it's especially in, I don't know about the rest of you, but I find that a big challenge we have is whenever we have information on finances and how to better budget and how to better just say whatever, that's always been a challenge where we know we have a lot of great information that we need people to engage more in, and we know it'll be helpful for them, but we just never get the participation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of what you're saying, they're great tools to stop and think, are we not asking ourselves the right questions? We're not maybe asking them the right questions about what is it that we should be doing. We aren't going to always get the answers, but I think it's definitely really helpful to think through these different steps to try to really diagnose whether it's a situation like this or if it's more of a relationship challenge that you might be having between a manager and an employee, for example.
Right. And the larger the organization, the harder it is to poll everybody and then meet everybody where they are, right? So, and even in this scenario, I can't help but notice that only me and PJ have been on camera the whole time. And so, I don't know what your engagement is. And here we are talking about engagement. And so, just as an aside, I invite you to come on camera so I can see your faces and see if you're nodding or if you're kind of wandering off mentally, because I don't know if what I'm saying is landing for you. And there's some humor in that, some irony in that that's what we're talking about. So, here it is. I can assume that you're disinterested and that I should speed up and just race through my material so that I can let you get back to your busy day. Or if I see you on camera nodding along, I can get a signal that says this is valuable to you and to keep going. So, in the spirit of engagement, I'd love to hear somebody else offer up, either in the chat or on camera, what this simple yet powerful process has done for you in thinking about the work that you do. Yeah, thank you for taking notes, Letitia. So for me, there's often this sense of I have something really valuable to share, and I know you all do too. And capturing people's very divided attention is incredibly challenging. They have to make decisions and prioritize how they're going to spend the highest value item that they have in their life, which is their time. We all have the same amount of time. It doesn't matter if you are wealthy or poor, are an executive or a blue collar worker. We have the same amount of time, and your autonomy over your time is not always yours. And so, how can you break through all of the competing priorities to speak to people from where they are and their needs? There, as that COO in my story, what's her motivation? What's her agenda? What's her prerogative? And so my HR leader was able to bend her mind a little bit to think, well, how can I introduce these important things from my department in such a way that the value to my audience is clear so that I'm not only communicating what needs to be done, I'm advocating for the finances that I need, I'm advocating for the time and space, and I'm standing with confidence in my level of expertise because that just kept chipping away at her confidence every time her new COO was kind of glossing over. She learned to put bullet points in her emails instead of narratives, but with backup information for her, should she be interested in seeing the greater details. She gained confidence in meetings to be able to say, that's a great question. I don't have that off the top of my head. Let me come back to you a few minutes after the meeting. Or I can look that up right now. Give me a minute. And say that with confidence instead of apology. Okay, so what else have we learned? Any insights that you want to share before we move on a little bit? I have a comment in the chat here from Shelley. Great work. Guilty of multitasking while answering emails. Yeah, we are not built for multitasking. We're just not. And so like every 4 months, there's another something that divides our attention and divides that attention. Capturing your people's undivided attention is becoming more challenging. And you have to get more creative on how to break through. And I'm not telling you to go make art. That's the best part. I'm telling you to lean into the things you're already good at, but giving you permission to spend that time being curious. All right. Last call for comments before we move on. My dangle for engagement. Pull my screen back up. So here's what I view as your key takeaways. We spent some time exploring the impact of misaligned assumptions from the top, having you imagine what this game could be that we're all playing. And the poll that showed us that there was no confidence, no strong confidence that there's alignment within your organization. I wanted to also talk to you about the business case for engagement. That's what we're going to do next. And why, when you're talking to somebody who's got the purse strings, you're able to advocate for for the type of work that you want to do. I want to give you some actionable insights. The specific idea of what if is the foundation of it. It allows you to challenge assumptions, to explore with curiosity, and to create success statements that will allow you to have more meaningful conversations to enhance the engagement that you're going for. And I want you to consider how you can take this, thinking about a prior challenge that you had, like Letitia did, or projecting forward to something that you're currently working on, how these insights could be used to help you clarify the goals of your team? Oh, you know what? I did not, hold on one second, because it skipped a page. This is why it was on the summary. So it's so important for the bottom line of your business that engagement works. You know this, but sometimes it's hard to advocate for what you need because there are people who say, well, it doesn't fit on this spreadsheet. It's not our top priority. Well, is performance and productivity part of a key indicator for them? Because highly engaged teams are 21% more productive. And what about the cost of people quitting or getting fired? What about when people don't show up or they're quiet quitting? They're physically there, but they're not really working. Aligned teams experience 41% lower absenteeism and 59% less turnover. And there's some calculators out there that you can use to put a dollar amount to what that means to your company. And companies with strong engagement see a 22% increase in profitability. So there is a financial argument for the work that you do, even if that's not your direct purview. And so I wanted to pause and ask, how many of you have bumped up against not being able to implement the engagement activities that you know are necessary because they didn't meet the criteria of some of the gatekeepers? And what would it mean for you to be able to speak in their language, to advocate for your need, not because it's good for the people and the well-being, because you make that argument to CFOs and they're gonna be like, that's nice. That's nice, right? But you tell them, Gallup's indicators, and here's a calculator, and you know how we just lost so and so, and this was their salary. This is what it's costing our organization through the recruitment process and the onboarding and the trial period. This is what it's going to cost. And so what if we had kept that person? What would we have saved? Now, we're not all empowered to have that kind of conversation, but there are elements of it that you can bring to the table in your pitch for the budget next year. So can I get a signal, a sign that this type of argument would be helpful for you as you advocate for the work that you do? I see some, thank you, Letitia. You're a chief engagement officer here. All right, so I do have some of those numbers in your workbook if you would find it useful. And so you can borrow them. They're not my numbers, but they are really helpful in doing part of what I did with my HR leader was think in terms of the motivators and agenda of the person you're working with. And so that's part of what that was about. Okay. So now that we have done that, our summary makes more sense in that we have a business case, your insights, and your next steps. And so as we've worked our way through this, and it has been about 40 minutes that we've been working on this. So we have some time to brainstorm together other insights of how this exercise and this perspective can be of use. I'd also like to take a few minutes to further illustrate what creative intelligence means in this context, how it's showing up. Because these are very actionable. These are not pie in the sky ideas that are nice to have. You can see that these processes, these tactics that I'm describing are actionable today for you. And that the mindset shift that you may have been having just over the last 30 minutes, think about what that could mean for the work that you're doing, your personal investment and engagement in your own work? Would this make you more interested in exploring these tough questions? So I would invite you to participate in sharing with your peers some of these insights. And maybe PJ, what's new here for you?
I was just trying to think about that as you were asking that question. I think that a lot of the challenges that we deal with, especially when you talk about engagement, and how we could better, I guess, be better from that standpoint, is that our workplace has completely changed. So we're dealing with a workplace that now we're trying to figure out how to do engagement in hybrid workplaces, remote workplaces, but do it in a way where we're getting the same results we did when we were mostly all in person, being able to do that and stay within a budget, and trying to be more creative and to come up with different ways, very similar to what we were talking about before, trying to figure out what is it that the employees want and how can we give it to them to end up with the same results, if not better. I mean, and it's absolutely a different landscape, but how do you do that and continue to be as effective as you need to be? And like you said, are you asking the right questions?
Remote work is incredibly challenging in that those people who started working together in person and then went remote have a different stability in their relationships, not only with each other, but with the company, than those who start remote. And there are lessons that can be learned from companies that are 100% remote, and they always have been. But that culture was built differently than one where it was built off of in person. In addition to that, we have political polarization that shows up at work. We have a need for neutral ground and to bridge differing ideas of what solutions and the process of solution might be. We have the end of year goals. I mean, just where we're sitting right now, depending on what your fiscal year is the end of this month, the end of your fiscal year, or are you in the middle of it? Where's your resource allocation going? As PJ was mentioning, I mean, doing more with less. I will tell you that one applied creativity tactic is leveraging scarce resources. How do you repurpose and reimagine what you already have? How do you redefine what a resource is so that your toolbox is expanded? Things that you might not have considered as a resource before might hold the key to how you can move forward. And these what if questions are really powerful in allowing you to go into imagination, if you will, not grounded by budget. What if allows you that permission to imagine future possibilities and find that incentive, that aspiration, the need, and then answer for that. Okay, so we agree that this is the aspiration. There are lots of ways to reach that aspiration, not just the first way we thought of. So now let's say, what if? How do we repurpose this resource? How do we consider something new to be a resource? How do we consider who we know? How do we consider time to be a resource? If you're launching a learning module, one of your resources to success is going to be timing. Timing in the calendar, in the seasons, and also timing in how long it's going to take somebody to get through the process. And of course, the holiday season can add extra layers of disengagement, heightened emotions. And I know that you're feeling those, people coming to you with additional gripes. How do you navigate that? How do you protect yourself from that? Then, of course, stress and burnout. HR is prime location for that, isn't it? So creative intelligence is not only the emotional intelligence piece, but noticing emotions as your trigger. That's your starting point. That's your signal. Good emotions, excitement, anticipation, negative emotions, frustration, anxiety, and fear. They're signals. Signals that it's time to start imagining a possibility, asking questions, challenging your assumptions. And after you imagine, that's great, but how do you put that into action? That's the third piece of it, right? You've gone through a transformation. Now what do you do? What's step one? What's the process look like? Because it's not just magical thinking. It needs to happen. And then you're butting up against other people and their emotional responses. So it's a whole journey all throughout the whole thing. It's not just you. But this what if, I chose one of the most powerful creative thinking questions to give you so that you had something you can hold on to. That question could be a multi-purpose question for you.
Well, Veronica, the workbook is definitely very helpful. Just kind of giving us some guidelines, where to start, what to be thinking about, and what to look at. One of the areas that I really do try to focus on additionally at the roundtable is what you said, and ensuring that as much as we're doing all of this for everyone else, that we do need to make sure that we're paying attention to how it's impacting us as well. Because I feel that HR absolutely takes on, as you said, with the burnout, and that we're taking on hearing everyone else's concerns and ensuring that we are figuring out ways to make sure that we remain engaged, that we are motivated, that we want to continue to be able to do what we do and continue to do it well. So I think, thank you so much for the workbook. I think it's, like I said, for us, I think a lot of the times it's just what are the right steps and what are the right questions to ask. And sometimes it's so helpful to have a guide to do that, or to someone to say, well, did you think about this? And kind of what's worked for you versus what's worked for me. And it'll be different for a lot of situations, but again, to just have that outline is always helpful.
You know, PJ, you say something really poignant and makes me think that, you know, people in HR tend to be very empathetic people, and empathy can be a superpower, but like any good thing, when used to an extreme, it can become your downfall. And so where are the borders of it? Where are your boundaries for you personally? But also, how can you lean into your empathy in a more intentional way so that it's not you along for the ride, it's you in control. And this element of curiosity creates some structure around your empathy to keep it away from your heart. So it's not about you. It's not about you not being good at your job when you're being curious. When you're being curious, it becomes about the other people and wondering, what are they up against? What might be the barriers that they're facing that are, you know, hidden from you, not part of your experience, and allow you to recognize that there's feedback in failure. And that's another really important element of creative thinking, is a prototyping mindset, experimentation. Because in a prototype, they don't expect it to work perfectly. It's supposed to give them back information to iterate and do something differently the next time. And so when you roll out a new L&D plan and it doesn't work, instead of seeing it as a failure, seeing it as a first step in an iteration, gathering feedback to that failure can help improve not only the next rollout, but engage the people that it's supposed to be impacting in the process. So it is no longer just an assignment. One more thing they have to check off their box. One more box they have to check off their list. It becomes something that they recognize is being offered for them, and they're invited into it. They're part of the solution. And so I'd love to hear any questions that you might have on creative intelligence, on the simple process of asking what if, on using applied creativity in your work. I mean, now's a great time to say, can it work for this challenge? Melanie, did I just see you come off of mute?
Oh, yeah, I did. I actually have um a scenario that I think we've been kind of struggling with for the last several years. I've been with the company for about 3 years. Obviously, during, where a lot of the office employees got to go remote, but we have mechanics, that work on aircraft that obviously cannot be remote. I feel like there's like some kind of underlying animosity from the mechanics that, the office people get to work from home whenever they may not be there to engage with us when they come here. Maybe they're just looking to, snoop around, get us in trouble, that kind of thing. You got the safety compliance person and the HR lady that, might just be, looking to cause trouble and, looking to change maybe their language or, kind of the ribbing that goes on or, whatever. Definitely some barriers there that they feel like, oh, well, we can do no wrong. We're as safe as possible. That guy, that's the safety guy, can't possibly know what we go through every day because one, he's not here every day. And two, it just sounds like he's not, he doesn't know what he's talking about. There's just definitely some assumptions on their side and assumptions on our side that, it's been difficult to engage that group of people. So in the exercise, that was really the thing that came to mind is, the assumptions are they don't want to engage or they don't want to hear from us because we don't understand their world, that we're a threat, to their group. Um, so those were some of my assumptions. Um, and then asking myself, you know, what, what if they do see things in, differently, and what if engagement, like, how is it that we can engage them so they feel empowered to let us know what their concerns are and that we're going to do something, about it. I don't know. So success to me looks like, the collaboration between the two groups, becomes better. That's what success, I think, you know, would be the ideal solution, for us.
So to take what we did today and add an element to it, what if these mechanics, here I'm doing a what if these mechanics wrote down their assumptions about HR? They didn't have to share them because sometimes they can be pretty harsh, right?
Mhm.
Like every time we hear from you, you're putting something else on, so what are their assumptions about HR? And challenging them to take every statement and flip it. And what if HR was actually doing the opposite?
Mm.
And what if there's a way to better understand HR's intentions so that HR can be better at delivering what you would like to be seeing?
Yeah,
So
that
that's
would be helpful, helpful exercise if you can get them to do it.
right. And maybe you don't even have them write it down. What's your biggest assumption about HR?
Mhm.
And what if HR's intention was actually the opposite of your assumption? What
Right.
would that mean for how you would look at us? Um, and that, by the way, is another creative thinking tactic, which is what's the opposite? And sometimes thinking about the opposite gives us a hint as to what a solution might be.
Great.
And before too many more people drop off, PJ, could you drop the second poll in for us? I'd love to get a sense of what this impact was for you. Not everybody felt comfortable or undivided enough to come on camera or drop comments in the chat, but I'd love to hear your response to the second poll here. So, how do you feel about using what you've learned today? And don't worry about offending me. This is my chance to find feedback from you so that I understand what is most appreciated. Okay. Well, okay, so for the person who said, the two people who said that this information was interesting but unlikely to address your challenges, then I'd actually love to find out what those challenges are because there are many more creative intelligence tactics that could be of use to you. That I could share. Just by merit of you being part of PJ's group, I'd love to extend that some extra support to you. My contact information is in the back of your workbook. I invite you all to connect with me on LinkedIn. I write about these types of things on a regular basis. And so you can find me there. And if there are any other questions that have come up, we can pull down the results of the poll. I'm happy to stick around for a couple minutes and discuss your specific scenario. Otherwise, right on dot, release you back to the world of HR and wish you the very best for a good weekend and a safe holiday season.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.